My name is Samantha. I am 34 years old, and for the past 4 years, I have served as the founder and chief executive officer of Vanguard Talent Solutions, a premier executive recruiting and corporate compliance firm headquartered on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Financial Tower downtown. 72 hours ago, on a crisp Monday morning, our chief talent acquisition officer, David, walked into my corner office carrying a beige applicant portfolio. He placed it across the dark walnut surface of my desk and said, "Samantha, we have 4 final candidates for the executive office manager role. 3 are strong internal transfers from peer firms, but the 4th applicant is an older woman applying through an open recruitment referral. Her resume shows 15 years of administrative and bookkeeping experience, but her background references are completely missing. She insisted on meeting the executive director in person, claiming she was uniquely qualified to run operations for high-level partners. Her name is Margaret Vance." I looked down at the paper. At the top of the standard white applicant sheet, printed in crisp black ink, was my mother's name, her maiden surname, her suburban address on Oak Ridge Lane, and her signature written in the exact looping cursive I had not seen since the winter of 2020. I leaned back in my leather ergonomic chair and looked out the floor-to-ceiling glass windows at the morning traffic winding through the city streets 400 feet below. David noticed my stillness. "Do you know her, Samantha? If she has a conflict of interest with your previous network, I can send a standard automated decline notice before the 11 o'clock panel." "No, David," I replied, keeping my voice level and quiet. "Do not decline her. Place her in interview room 4B at 11 o'clock sharp. Leave the glass blinds open, let the secondary panel interview her first, and let me handle the final evaluation myself." At 10:55, my mother arrived on the 42nd floor. She was wearing a tailored navy blazer with brass buttons, the very blazer I had bought for her on her 55th birthday using my first entry-level payroll check. She carried a faux leather portfolio under her arm, walking across our polished, white porcelain floors with the confident, dismissive gait of someone who believed the entire world was her personal lobby. She sat down in room 4B, crossed her legs, smiled condescendingly at my 27-year-old junior recruiter, and said loud enough for the glass walls to resonate, "Young lady, I have managed corporate households and financial operations for 30 years. I don't need 3 rounds of behavioral questions. Tell your managing director that Margaret Vance is here to organize this department properly. You owe someone of my stature that courtesy." I took off my reading glasses, smoothed down the front of my charcoal Italian wool blazer, picked up my black leather review folio, and stepped through the double glass doors. When the handle clicked, my mother looked up, ready to deliver another practiced speech about her administrative authority. Then she saw my face. The silence that fell over interview room 4B did not last 3 seconds. It lasted 19 seconds. I counted every single beat of the quartz wall clock behind her chair. The faux leather folder slid out of her fingers and hit the carpet with a soft thud. Her jaw fell slightly open. The color in her cheeks, artificially bright from blush, faded into a chalky, sickly pale gray. Her eyes moved from my face to the executive security badge clipped to my lapel, to the massive glass suite behind me bearing the brass lettering. "Samantha Vance, founding partner and CEO." "Samantha?" my mother whispered, her voice cracking, completely devoid of the sharp arrogance she had carried into the lobby 5 minutes earlier. You work here?" I did not smile. I did not raise my voice. I took the high-backed leather chair across from her, folded my hands over the desk, and looked her dead in the eyes. "No, Margaret," I said softly. "I do not work here. I own the company. And according to the file you submitted to my human resources team, you ran away from your last 3 positions after failing an internal financial audit." To understand why my mother looked at me in that high-rise boardroom as though she were staring at a ghost from the grave, you have to rewind 6 years. You have to go back to the freezing rain of November 2020. You have to understand how our family functioned for 3 decades. In the Vance household, there was a strict, unspoken caste system. At the top of the hierarchy stood my younger brother, Tyler. In the middle were my parents, George and Margaret. And at the absolute bottom, existing solely as an uncompensated labor engine, was me. Tyler was 4 years younger than me. He was loud, charming, reckless, and completely insulated from the concept of cause and effect. If Tyler crashed my father's sedan while racing friends at 19, my parents praised him for having quick reflexes that prevented a worse accident. If Tyler accumulated $40,000 in unpaid credit card debt on designer streetwear, luxury club VIP tables, and weekend ski trips, my mother blamed the predatory credit card companies for targeting innocent young men. And whenever the debt collectors began sending certified letters to the house, my parents turned their gaze toward me. I started working at 15 years old. While Tyler spent his teenage summers at private sports camps and resort lakes, I was waking up at 5 in the morning to work the breakfast shift at a local industrial bakery. When I went to college to study corporate finance and organizational management, I did not receive a single dollar of financial support from my family. I worked 35 hours a week as a nighttime data entry clerk, attended lectures during the day, and slept 4 hours a night in a cramped, drafty attic apartment where the radiator clanked incessantly. When I graduated with honors, my parents did not attend my commencement. My mother left a 2-sentence voicemail. Tyler has a regional gaming tournament in Chicago this weekend. We have to drive him. You can take a selfie with your diploma and text it to us. I did not cry. I did not complain. By age 22, I had already learned the most important survival lesson of my life. Blood relations do not guarantee loyalty. If I wanted security, freedom, and peace, I had to build a fortress that no one in that family could ever breach. After college, I entered the executive recruitment and staffing sector. I started as a junior sourcing agent, working 70 hours a week. I learned employment law, corporate compliance, payroll structures, and executive placement. I saved 85% of my take-home pay. While my peers leased new cars and rented luxury downtown lofts, I rode public transit, cooked simple meals at home, and funneled every spare dollar into commercial index funds and business savings accounts. By the time I reached 28, in late 2020, I had built a personal liquid reserve of $180,000. I was preparing to resign from my corporate employer to launch Vanguard Talent Solutions. Then came the family disaster of November 12, 2020. My father called me on a Thursday evening, his voice trembling with panic, begging me to come to the family home immediately for an emergency meeting. When I arrived, the living room smelled of stale coffee and burnt toast. Tyler was sitting on the sofa with his head between his knees, while my mother paced across the carpet, wringing a damp handkerchief in her hands. My father dropped a thick stack of manila folders onto the coffee table. Tyler had decided 18 months earlier to launch a private crypto arbitrage trading syndicate with 2 of his college fraternity friends. Because Tyler had no collateral and zero creditworthiness, my father had co-signed on 3 separate high-interest private business loans totaling $210,000. Tyler didn't invest the money in software or legitimate trading infrastructure. He spent $60,000 on an office launch party in Miami, leased a luxury electric sports car under the business entity, and lost the remaining $150,000 in unregulated offshore derivative contracts within 4 months. The private lending firm had secured a preliminary legal judgment against my father's home. The final statutory grace period was set to expire in 10 days. If the full balance of $210,000 was not settled, the sheriff's office would initiate public auction proceedings on my parents' house, and my father's municipal pension would be subjected to 40% wage garnishment. My mother stopped pacing, walked over to my chair, and took both of my hands in hers. "Samantha," she said, her voice filled with manufactured maternal affection. "You have always been the sensible one. You work in finance. We know you have saved nearly $200,000 over the last 6 years. We need you to wire $180,000 to the lender's escrow account tomorrow morning. Your father and I have already signed the authorization paperwork. You just have to supply the routing number." I looked at the documents on the table. Then I looked at Tyler, who was peeking through his fingers to see if I was going to rescue him again. "Is this a formal commercial loan, Mom?" I asked quietly. Are we drafting a promissory note secured by Tyler's future wages, with an equity lien on Dad's assets? My father exploded from his chair. A promissory note? Are you out of your mind? This is your brother. He made a mistake because he is ambitious. You are sitting on a pile of cash in your bank account doing nothing with it, while your family is on the verge of being thrown onto the street. You don't charge your own blood interest, and you don't demand contracts from your family. Then the answer is no, I said, setting the paperwork back on the table. The silence that hit that room was absolute. My mother dropped my hands as if they had caught fire. Her face hardened, her lips thinning into a vicious line. What did you say? I said no, Mom. I repeated calmly. I worked 70 hours a week for 6 years to build that capital. I skipped vacations, I lived in damp basement apartments, and I sacrificed my health to build a future. Tyler has never held a job for more than 4 months. He spent $60,000 on parties in Miami. I am not throwing 6 years of my life into a furnace to cover his reckless gambling. My father stepped around the coffee table, kicked my chair leg, and pointed his finger straight into my face. You listen to me, you selfish, cold-hearted monster, he roared, saliva flying from his lips. If you walk out of this house without paying this debt, you are no daughter of mine. You are an ungrateful leech who took everything this family gave you and turned your back the second we needed you. If you don't wire that money by tomorrow at noon, you don't exist to us. You are dead. Get out of my sight. My mother did not say a word to stop him. She crossed her arms and stared out the window. Tyler smirked from the couch, whispering, "Have fun being alone in your miserable little life, Samantha." I stood up, took my coat from the hallway rack, walked out into the freezing rain, and never set foot in that house again. Over the next 6 years, my family executed a campaign of social and reputational erasure that was as thorough as it was vicious. Instead of admitting to our extended relatives that Tyler had ruined them through financial recklessness, my parents created a complete fabrication. The house on Oak Ridge Lane. We were forced to move into that awful, noisy duplex near the train tracks. Your father's health has collapsed from the stress, and his pension barely covers our prescription medications. We have been struggling to buy groceries every single month. And you have been sitting up here in a luxury glass tower with millions of dollars, doing nothing to help your own flesh and blood. I listened to her speech without blinking. I did not interrupt. I let every word hang in the air of the soundproof boardroom. Are you finished? I asked quietly. She sniffled, nodding her head vigorously, leaning forward with an eager, pleading look in her eyes. Samantha, God brought me to this office today. It is a miracle. You can hire me as the executive office director right now. The salary listed on the recruitment portal is $110,000. That would save us. We could move out of that horrible duplex, pay off the debts, and help Tyler get his business back on track. We can forget everything that happened in the past. We are family, Samantha. Family always forgives. I looked at the woman sitting across from me. I did not see a mother. I saw a parasitic manipulator who had spent 30 years exploiting my labor, who had discarded me the second I refused to be robbed, who had spent 6 years telling everyone in our community that I was a criminal and a runaway, and who now believed that an accident of genetics entitled her to a 6-figure corporate salary at my company. I opened the black leather portfolio on my desk. Let's review your application, Margaret, I said in a clinical tone. Her smile faltered. My application? Samantha, you don't need to review paperwork. I'm your mother. This is a commercial recruitment enterprise, not a family charity, I replied, pulling out the 3-page resume she had submitted. On page 1, you claim that between 2021 and 2024, you served as the senior operations and payroll administrator for a regional logistics company. But when our preliminary compliance software ran your tax identification number through the state corporate registry, that logistics firm was dissolved in 2022 due to commercial insolvency. In reality, You worked as an entry-level clerk for 8 months before being terminated for unauthorized accounting discrepancies. My mother's face turned from pale white to a deep, blotchy crimson. That was a misunderstanding. The manager was jealous of my experience. On page 2, I continued, turning the sheet with a crisp snap. You failed to provide 3 professional managerial references. You listed 2 church acquaintances and Tyler. When our junior recruiter called Tyler this morning to verify your management history, Tyler offered to expedite the background check if our firm paid him a $2,000 consulting retainer. My mother gasped, sinking back into her chair. And on page 3, I said, leaning forward and resting my forearms on the desk. Under the section requiring candidates to disclose any history of financial malfeasance, embezzlement, or civil judgments, you checked the box marked none. I pulled out a second folder from my portfolio. A folder containing the certified 2020 municipal court judgment, the foreclosure transcripts, and the pension garnishment records from the state registry. I slid the documents across the mahogany table until they tapped against her manicured fingers. You have an active 40% civil wage garnishment order registered against your household under State File Number 4409-B, I said, projecting my voice with lethal precision. If Vanguard Talent Solutions hired you at a salary of $110,000, $44,000 of that salary would be automatically intercepted by the state sheriff's department to pay off the remaining balance of Tyler's defaulted crypto debts. You did not apply here to manage an office, Margaret. You applied here because your household is drowning in the exact financial ruin I warned you about 6 years ago. My mother stared at the court documents. Her hands began shaking so violently that she dropped her tissue onto the floor. The desperate, pleading facade vanished. The tears stopped instantly. Her eyes turned dark with pure, unfiltered rage. She slammed both of her fists onto the conference table, standing up so abruptly that her high-backed chair rolled backward and hit the glass wall with a loud thud. "You arrogant, ungrateful little bitch," she screamed, her voice piercing through the glass into the main executive floor. "How dare you pull my personal financial records? How dare you sit there in your fancy designer clothes and judge me? I gave birth to you. I fed you. I gave up my youth to raise you, and you repay me by acting like a corporate tyrant. You owe me everything you have. If it weren't for your father and me, you would be nothing. You are going to sign my employment contract right now? Or I swear to God I will walk out into that lobby, call every newspaper in this city, and tell them that the CEO of Vanguard Talent Solutions is an abusive daughter who abandons her starving parents." The entire executive floor outside the glass wall came to an absolute standstill. 30 employees, 2 vice presidents, and 4 visiting corporate clients stopped in their tracks, turning their heads toward interview room 4B. David, our head of talent acquisition, rushed toward the door, his hand on the handle, ready to intervene. I raised my left hand slightly toward David through the glass, signaling him to stand down. I did not flinch. My heart rate did not accelerate. I did not raise my voice by even half a decibel. I stood up slowly from my chair, smoothed my jacket, and looked my mother directly in her bloodshot, furious eyes. "Do you know what this room is equipped with, Margaret?" I asked softly. She paused, breathing heavily, her chest heaving beneath her blazer. "What are you talking about?" I pointed toward the subtle black dome mounted in the ceiling directly above the table. Under our corporate compliance protocol, every executive interview room in this facility is equipped with 4K multi-angle video recording and synchronized multi-directional audio capture, I explained. From the second you sat in that chair, every word you spoke, your admission of falsified resumes, your attempt to secure employment under false pretenses, your extortion threats, and your verbal abuse, has been recorded, encrypted, and backed up to our cloud legal server. My mother froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "If you take one step into that lobby and utter a single defamatory word about this company," I continued, taking a slow step toward her, My chief legal counsel will have a criminal harassment and commercial extortion complaint filed with the state prosecutor's office before your bus reaches the suburban station. Furthermore, I will release the complete video recording of this interview, alongside the certified records of Tyler's 2020 debts, to every single member of the Vance family email list, the Oak Ridge Church Council, and our former neighbors. She took a staggering step backward, clutching her throat. You wouldn't dare. They are your family. You told the entire family 6 years ago that I was dead, I said, my voice cutting through the room with unyielding finality. For 6 years, I have honored your declaration. Dead people do not sign employment contracts. Dead people do not subsidize golden children. And dead people do not rescue abusive parents from the poverty they engineered for themselves. I picked up the applicant file, dropped it into the wastebasket beside the desk, and pressed the intercom button on the wall console. Security, I said clearly. Please escort the applicant in room 4B out of the building. Revoke her guest visitor badge and add her details to the permanent building trespass list. 2 seconds later, the glass door opened. 2 armed building security officers, accompanied by David, stepped into the room. Ma'am, the lead security officer said firmly, placing his hand near his utility belt. You need to collect your belongings and exit the premises immediately. My mother looked around the room, realizing that her manipulation, her screaming, and her threats had completely failed. She looked at David, who was staring at her with professional disgust. She looked at the security guards standing like stone pillars at the doorway. She picked up her faux leather portfolio with trembling hands, pulled her blazer tightly around herself, and walked out of the room. I stood at the glass wall of my corner office and watched her walk across the polished white floor of the main lobby. Her head was down. Her shoulders were slumped. She did not look at the staff. She did not look at the executive directory. She stepped into the elevator. The steel doors closed, and she vanished from the 42nd floor forever. That afternoon, I did not take time off to recover. I did not sit in the dark feeling sorry for myself. I called an all-hands meeting with our executive leadership team, approved the hiring of a brilliant internal candidate for the office manager position, and reviewed our fourth-quarter expansion strategy into the Chicago market. 2 days later, on Wednesday evening, my personal phone received a text message from an unknown number. It was my father. George, Samantha. Your mother came home in absolute hysterics on Monday. She told me what happened at your office. I don't know what to say. We didn't know you had built something so large. Tyler is facing eviction from his apartment next week, and the heating unit in our duplex broke yesterday. The repair is $4,000 that we don't have. Please, Samantha. We are an old couple. Whatever mistakes were made in 2020, you have proved your point. You won. Can you please just send enough money to fix the heat and pay Tyler's rent? We will never bother you again. I read the message twice sitting on the balcony of my downtown penthouse, watching the sun dip below the city skyline, reflecting gold and crimson across the lake. There was no triumph in my heart. There was no petty joy. There was only the cold, unshakable clarity of a woman who had finally stepped out of the shadow of generational exploitation. I did not type a long, emotional paragraph. I did not list 20 years of neglect, missed graduations, and stolen savings. I typed 8 words. Dead people do not pay for your heat. I blocked the number, deleted the message thread, archived the screenshot into the Vance ledger on my secure drive, and set my phone face down on the outdoor table. Over the following months, the truth finally tore through what remained of my family's social standing. Aunt Clara, who had heard rumors of my mother's humiliating removal from the Meridian Financial Tower, called my corporate office directly. When my executive assistant patched her through, Aunt Clara asked with genuine remorse what had truly happened over the last 6 years. I did not exaggerate. I did not insult my parents. I simply sent Aunt Clara a password-protected link to the digital archive containing the 2020 court filings, the loan records, and the bank statements. Within 48 hours, the truth circulated through our entire extended family network. The aunts, uncles, and cousins who had spent 6 years looking down on me as a delinquent runaway finally realized that my parents had orchestrated a massive, self-serving lie to protect Tyler's reckless ego. 3 of my cousins sent long, apologetic emails admitting they had been manipulated by my mother's theatrical tears. My mother was asked to step down from her position on the Chuck H. Charity Committee, and several extended relatives stopped inviting my parents to family holiday gatherings. Tyler was eventually forced to take a job working third-shift inventory stocking at a regional distribution center to avoid living on the street. My parents remained in their cramped, drafty duplex on the industrial side of town, forced to live within the exact tight financial limits my father's reduced pension dictated. People often ask if cutting ties with toxic family members leaves a permanent void in your life. They ask if you feel guilty when you see them struggle while you thrive in luxury and peace. The answer is simple. The guilt does not belong to the survivor. The guilt belongs to the abusers who assumed your kindness was weakness, who treated your hard work as their personal entitlement, and who were willing to destroy your reputation the moment you refused to be their sacrificial lamb. Setting boundaries with abusive family is not an act of vengeance. It is an act of supreme self-preservation. You cannot save people who view you only as a life raft to be burned for warmth. You cannot build a healthy future on top of a foundation of entitlement, deceit, and disrespect. Never apologize for walking away from people who only loved the utility you provided. And never feel guilty for building an empire so strong that their cruelty can never reach you again. If you were in my shoes, would you have given your mother the job to help fix their heat? Or did she get the exact lesson she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.